Hi folks, my name is Tommy T and I'm an alcoholic. How y'all doing? It's about as southern as it gets, and I'll try to slow it down a little bit, but I do want to start out with some thank yous because my heart is full already. I mean, I come up here and I'm trying to be a tough guy from New York and I'm crying during the candle ceremony. This is not going to go well, but things like this don't get put on by themselves. So I haven't met all the committee members yet, but I do know a few of them. And just a round of applause for them, because this stuff, just wonderful. And our good friend Lee, who records these things for prosperity's sakes, and that we can listen to. Lord knows, CDs and back in the day, cassette tapes saved my butt many times when I was losing my mind in that normal world that's so hostile to me. And I just need to touch base with you folks to feel okay. I always have them in my work car, and it's a wonderful, wonderful thing. Thanks, Lee. And my man Barkley. So when I found out that I was opening up this conference, I was very honored. And I have a bunch of friends down here, so everybody called me, except Barkley. And I knew he was my host, so I reached out to him and said, "You are the worst host I've ever had." But I don't know if he would always be this over the top, but I asked him for a dinner recommendation on Monday. My wife and I have been down since Monday. And he sent me it was like you got bombed on your computer with adware or something. Like all these restaurants just kept popping up. And he's just been over the top, taking care of Cheryl and I. And of course, I would be remiss to thank my friend Steve for giving me the ass to come down here. And if I should say anything to offend anybody, your AA doesn't exactly match up how I practice my AA. See Steve after the meeting. So he's got tougher skin than me. He can handle it. I'm still a little fragile. And of course, my biggest thanks goes to my biggest supporter and my partner in life, and my wife Cheryl. And we celebrated 9 years of marriage on Tuesday. Oh, it's a big deal. We both got 2 in the background before this one. We're saying third's the charm, We would kid around on our 4th anniversary that, hey, we beat all the other ones combined, So that's where we come from. So the fact that I'm with such a beautiful partner for 17 years, married for 9, with a wonderful family, is a tribute to God and AA. And I hope that's what I can get across to you folks tonight. It's what it was like, which it wasn't good, what happened, and what it's like now. And if you'll indulge me, I'd just like to, this is for me, this is not for you. I know you folks are prayed up, but I found a prayer a few years back that's really dear to my heart, and it was done by an overeating rabbi who took a non-denominational look at our 12 steps, and it's from the Sacred Art, Rami Shapiro, and it just sums AA up to me in such a way that it touches my heart every time. So please indulge me with this. And if not, you have sponsors. That's what we're supposed to use them for. Well, the guy got up there and prayed, But my God, the soul you have placed in me is pure. I am free to live today differently than yesterday. Because it is pure, I'm free to live without the burden of past habits, past fears, past mistakes, and past failures. I am free to look at my past without repeating it, to examine for it lessons to be learned and amends to be made, to draw from it what guidance I can to live differently today. My God, may I use today's gift of freedom to further my capacity to serve you by serving your kids with justice, compassion, and humility. So I don't know if you've noticed, but I've just been in a spot in my recovery lately. I can't get through a 15-minute talk at home group without crying, so this is what you got. You got a mess up here tonight. But if your God's anything like mine, he's got a sense of humor. So he takes a guy from Staten Island who's got a fear of being judged, a fear that he's never good enough, and he throws him in front of 15 hillbillies down in Tennessee and says, tell him your story, right? So that's where we're at, and we'll see where he takes us. And, so I am Tommy T. I'm an alcoholic, and I'm sober since April 8th, 1995. I am the proud participating member of the Decker Avenue Step Group. We're a small 12 and 12 group. We meet on Monday nights on Staten Island. So if you ever visit in the big city and you make a wrong turn, you might end up on Staten Island. If it's on a Monday night, please come and see us. You will get a warm handshake. You'll get a real bad cup of coffee. If you're new, you'll get a free big book. But I'm telling you, folks, if you're suffering from alcoholism, you will not leave that room without a sponsor. And if you stay with us, you're going to go through these 12 steps. You're going to get yourself familiar with traditions and the concepts. And we're going to put you in the service structure whether you want to or not. That hand's just going to mysteriously go up, you know. Your sponsor will be pulling it up, but that's what we do. And it's worked for a real long time. I've been a member there for 27 years. And I probably only wanted to leave the home group about 54 times. Right? Get my little resentment, they're not doing what I'm saying, nobody's treating me like an elder statesman, I'm out of here, you know. But I come from a line of sponsorship of, you know, do your own inventory, see what it's like. And I lick my paws a little bit and go back to home group and make amends, you know, for being an idiot, 25 years sober or whatever it was, you know. So, but I owe my life to Alcoholics Anonymous, and I did not want to come to you folks. You are the last stop on the block. I was not sitting in my basement with the trophy wife, just hit, you know, mega lotto and said, hey, let me go find those old guys and find God in the church basement. You know, it wasn't like that. I had some help from the New York City Police Department, the court system, the family court system, a program called Treatment Against Street Crime, TASK. When I came in, I had to wear a beeper, for those of you that might remember beepers. And if they beat me, I had to go give a urine sample within an hour. I had to tell my employer about it. I had to tell everybody about it because I could not make that, or else I was going to do some jail time. You know, I kind of envy the newcomers nowadays that can go to a detox and then a 30, 60, 90, 6-month rehab and, you know, come out and get halfway housing, three-quarter housing, whatever housing they get. They get a little state ed and take 5 culinary classes, and their biggest issue that first year of sobriety is, should I go to the 10 or the 10:30 meeting, you know? And mine was not like that. You know, when I came in here, it was court appearances, it was child support hearings, it was just everything, trying to stay out of jail with the intent of going back to drinking. Quitting never entered my mind. How am I going to do it without the consequences that I always face? That's where I was at when I came to you folks. And it wasn't always bad. You know, I hear a lot of people just explain the perils and the troubles alcohol caused, but in the beginning, alcohol answered all my problems. 11 years old, grew up in an alcoholic home with a dad that is written about in our text, you know, a real Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. You never knew who was coming home, happy dad or crazy dad. And when you expected happy, crazy came, and when you expected crazy, happy came, and you just never knew what was going on. And, you know, we all have that thing when we come to AA, or the reason we say we drink, right, when we're in that victimhood that we come in here with. Dad was my thing. You know, if you had my dad, you'd drink like I did too. If you took the beatings I took, you'd drink like me too. If you saw the things as a young kid that I saw, heard the things that I saw as a young man or a boy, you would drink like I drank too. I hung tough with those feelings and those insecurities that my dad didn't love me and all that stuff for as long as I could. But at 11 years old, when 2 guys asked me, hey, Tommy, we're going to get beers. 2 guys named Jimmy. Yes, it was an Italian neighborhood. And, you know, and they said, we're going to get beers. They were a couple of years older than me. Are you in? I didn't hesitate. I said, I'm in. They said, well, you're going to need some money. No problem, I'll steal it. And that started, you know, 25 years of pursuing alcohol at any lengths. I will go to any lengths for alcohol. Recovery, a little shaky in the beginning, but, you know, but for alcohol, I will go to any lengths. And, you know, so we were going down, and back then it was a trusting world on Staten Island, and you could basically, you know, the butcher used to have the little pencil behind his ear. You'd go in and you get groceries, he'd write up the bill on the bag, and he'd say, tell Mom to see me Friday. Like, you know, everybody knew everybody. It was a big, small town. So I forged the letter, you know, please sell Tom 3 quarts of Miller and a pack of Marlboros. Love Millie, you know, my mother's name. I was about 5 foot tall, you know, it was a horror show. But as we're walking down there, we see this junkie on the corner, and you know, it's not like it is today. Back then, the junkies knew their place. You know, they were in the abandoned buildings, they were in the park, they kept it low key. They weren't just defecating in the middle of like Broadway, right? I mean, you know, as they do now. But this guy was catching a nod, and he snapped out of it, and he said, where you guys going? And we said, we're gonna go buy some beers. And he said, drink them warm, through a straw, you'll get messed up quicker. Back then, we followed directions. I mean, you come in here 25 years later, and an old timer tells you, hey, son, get a sponsor, get a home group. Do these 12 steps. You're like, nah, I got this. But that junkie on the corner, that's my life's coach right there. That's my mentor. I will follow him to the gates of hell and back. So we went down, we bought warm Miller beer. I remember the young girl behind the counter when I said, oh, can I have 3 straws too? And she said, your mother drinks through a straw? I said, she's got a problem. Just give me the straws. And we went, and I'll date myself a little bit. It was 1970, and I had a boom box. I had the old jeans jacket with my favorite band, Yes, embroidered on the back. My hair was down to about here, and we had our favorite CD of that year, 1970, was Neil Young, Harvest, and the song that we loved was The Needle and the Damage Done, of course. And we sang it poorly at the top of our lungs all night, and we cracked those beers. And I didn't realize it then, and I didn't realize it for many years, that I drink differently than my friends all the time. I finished mine quickly. I got drunk very quickly. But I'll tell you, the miracle of alcohol, where the shoulders come down, you feel a little taller, you feel a little better looking, you can fight with the guys, you can talk to the girls. All those insecurities just were shed from me. This was my answer, and I knew it right away. And I didn't care about any consequences. I knew. We were supposed to be back, at 11 years old, I had to be back on the porch when the street lights went on. Right? That's about 8:30. I couldn't even find my porch at 8:30. I got home at like 12:30, 1 o'clock, and took a beating from my father. And you know what, the next day, it wasn't about, oh, I can't ever do that again. It's like, how am I going to do it better so he doesn't catch me? And that led to, it was a blackout the first night. I had a fight with one guy because when I finished mine, they were doing something that I have never done in my life. They were putting the caps back on their bottle, and they were going to stash it in the weeds. And they said, well, tomorrow's Saturday night, Tom. We need something for tomorrow night. And I said, the hell we do. I'll steal more money. And I pushed one guy down. I chugged his, got sloppy, had a fight with him, won that fight. But then I went after the big guy. I made a little tactical error there and took my first of many alcoholic beatings and woke up in a blackout. They were gone. My boombox was gone. I had a cut lip. I had a cigarette burn. I wasn't even smoking cigarettes. And that can pretty much be my drunkalogue, because that's how it was for 25 years. It got progressively worse. And without telling a bunch of those stories, I think it's fair to tell you the man that you brought down here to speak, and the boy and the young man that I was. When I drink, I don't care about anybody. And that causes a lot of harm. And at 16 years old, I stole money from my grandmother, who was dying of cancer. And this woman loved me and protected me from her son, my father. Whenever he was drunk, we'd go to grandma's house as a place of safety. And when you went in that door and you smelled mothballs, you knew you were safe. She was my conception of a higher power for the first 5 years of my sobriety. I would talk to grandma all the time. And she was just wonderful. And I stole from her, and one of the last things I said to her was, no, grandma, I would never take money from you. I love you too much. And that just burnt a hole in my soul at that young age. And then at 17, I got a girl pregnant, my childhood sweetheart, and they were a very Christian family, and they weren't having that. I was not worthy of being a father at 17 in any way, shape, or form. So we put that boy up for adoption. His name is Matthew. He's 47. I have never met him. That stuff just eats away at you, bit by bit. And there were terminated pregnancies where I was man enough to pay for it, but I wasn't man enough to support that woman. I've done a lot of things I'm not proud of in pursuit of alcohol. Our book tells us we're incredible, we're normal in many respects, but when it comes to alcohol, we're incredibly selfish and dishonest. That sells it short. If you were my friend, I lied to you, I stole from you. I'm the guy that'll steal from you and help you look for it. And I think that makes me feel a little better. Like, it was in my pocket the whole time, but I helped you look. The fights came, the broken relationships were steady. Friends, I just started to migrate to different friend groups, just lowered the bar a little bit every time. And you can always find lower. I'll tell you, it's great when you're in those cups. But But in 1985, I got another girl pregnant, and seems to be an MO with me. And my friends were off to college, they were getting married, they were having children, and I said, maybe marriage will fix me. And I don't mean this to be funny, but I gave that woman the best 6 weeks of my life. Because she got in the way of my drinking, and I had no problem running out on an 8-month pregnant woman, never to see that boy for 8 years. His name is Brett. All these things just ate up on me and ate up on me. See, when I first started drinking, I drank to get that relief, to get that ease and comfort produced by that drink. Others that I see take with impunity. I had to look up impunity. I'm not the sharpest guy in the book, I didn't understand it. But all my friends, the hard drinker friends of mine, they all made my first fourth step. Like, why could they do it and still be employed and do everything? And why did I have to hit the skids the way I did, But it was just, at the end of my drinking, I couldn't even look at myself in the mirror. I've spit in the mirror many, many times. I've broken a few, and then cut my hand real badly and said, what'd you do that for, But it was just a common occurrence where I couldn't look at myself, and it would just gnaw at me all the time. It was torture, those last years. And I had brief stints with, I would say, I didn't become an everyday drinker right away, but I became an everyday thinker. I always thought about booze. When was the next time I was going out? How I was going to do it enough? Do I have enough money saved to make it worthwhile going out? Because I know it's going to last days. I need some cash, and all those things. So there was periods of abstinence there, but out of my mind abstinence. And I stayed sober with some other substances and things, but no alcohol, from 87 to 1990. And I just did it by working a lot of overtime. I went to school. I got licenses in engineering. I did pretty well. And then I said, let me just reward myself, and I'll take a little trip. And I won't drink. Maybe a little ganja down in Jamaica, but no drinking. So I booked a trip to a place called Hedonism. And I don't make good decisions, even abstinent. And this is a place that on the plane going down there, they serve you rum punch for free. And if it's for free, it's for me. And so I had air marshals escort me off the plane because I roughed some guy up for a straw hat that I thought would look cool in the week in Jamaica. And then I'm in the airport, and some of you might remember an ad campaign for Air Jamaica. It was like, come back to Jamaica. I'm dancing with those girls in the airport. They can't get me off the stage. I'm almost getting locked up. My feet haven't even hit sand yet, and I am the biggest asshole in Jamaica. It just add alcohol, instant asshole. And I did 8 days down there. I don't think I slept for more than 4 or 5 hours. Found every substance in the world and just went crazy. And the beast was out of the cage after a 3-year break. And the only reason I tell that story is because it wasn't like I got any better in those 3 years. I picked up as if I drank hard for those 3 years. I went right back to it. I was the craziest guy at a clothes-optional, single, wife-swapping type of place. And they all knew my name at breakfast, and I didn't know anybody. And on that plane ride home, I just said to myself, I have a new girlfriend, doesn't know I drink. I'm starting a new job Monday. They don't know I drink. And I never thought how I'm going to stop. I tried to devise a plan how I would drink and control my drinking. If there's anybody here today that's thinking about that, please see me after the meeting. It's a bad idea. It's never going to get better for folks like us. Never. It's not my experience. So for 5 years, 1990 to 1995, I can give you a little snapshot of that. I was 35 years old, or 30 years old at that point, oldest guy in the club, not an attractive look. These kids are drinking stuff like Alabama Slammers and stuff like that. Give me Jack Daniels, get away from me. I'm not that social in the nightclub scene anymore. So now I find myself at a gin mill, an old-time saloon, sawdust on the floor, smells of beer and urine. You can get a hard-boiled egg for dinner and call it a chicken dinner. I love this place. This is my shuffleboard bowling, my kind of place, And it's me and 3 65-year-old guys. If you have an argument with one of them, you beat up a 65-year-old. Pretty much, I'm better looking and I'm stronger than these guys. I can handle myself here. How much trouble am I going to get in? And I would do that. And, if a young woman would come into the bar, well, it's about honesty, right? If any woman would come into the bar, I'm your guy, right? I'm pretty much the king of the Armory Inn at this point. And was a rough 5 years, I'm telling you. It's just pitiful and demoralizing for memories, I'm telling you. And what would happen is I had a dive apartment down the street from it. I'd grab a six-pack from the bar, put it on my tab, I'd take that young lady down to my apartment. We'd have a romantic evening. I'd remember her name because the romantic evening kind of pulled me away from the bar a little bit. I would take her to breakfast. I would open the car door. I would pay the breakfast tab. I would remember her name, get her phone number, drop her off, drop the phone number out the door because I'm such a nice guy. And then my mind would start playing. I had money in my pocket, didn't crack up the car, everything's good. You could do this, Tom. You're making too much of this alcohol stuff. And it would just chomp at me all day Saturday. And then I'd say, okay, I'll do it again tonight. And I go out on Saturday night, I sit in that same bar stool, I have that same Jack Daniels, that same beer, but no young lady comes in. And now I go out and find the worst places in New York City, and we are a freak show in New York City. There's some pretty freaky doors if you knew which ones to knock on. And I'd go to all of them. And all of a sudden I'd wake up and it'd be Tuesday. I didn't call into that new job Monday or Tuesday, that's a problem. I reach into my pocket and I say, oh, I got some money, I can get home. And I pull out, there's 5 ATM slips, I wiped out the bank account. I don't remember doing any of it. Oh my God, is that a cross-dressing dude in the bed? How'd that happen? Again. And then you got to go play it off like you're okay when you go back to work at Wednesday with a new story and everything else. And it was just a hellish way to live. And I endured that for 5 years. If you're one of us, just stay. I hate that saying nowadays, keep coming back. I don't mean to offend anybody. Stay. It's not going to get better for folks like us. It will never get better for folks like us. So, on the last night I went out, the last 2 nights I went out, it's always a 2-day binge, and I ended up getting pulled over for my 3rd DWI, but it was a little more serious twist this time. I had a revolver in my belt and one in the chamber, and had a bunch of non-conference approved party favors in the back seat. And my only defense was when they wanted to tag on the charge for with intent to distribute. Oh no, Your Honor, it was payday. They were mine. Not a good defense lawyer on my own. So I was looking at jail time, and they put me in all these programs. And I actually did not go to AA for the first 6 months that I didn't drink, because I thought that was some type of commitment to not drinking, and I just couldn't have that. See, I could pull off a few months here or there, knowing I was going back. But when I read in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, the only thing we have to offer the alcoholic is entire abstinence, I'm like, that's a bit harsh. Right? If you could give me a 6-step program to control drinking without quantity, I'm all in. But this 12-step stuff and this God stuff, I'm not having it. So I white-knuckled it in Alcoholics Anonymous for 18 months. And I'm telling you, I was out of my mind. See, on Staten Island, the fellowship was really, really strong, and I would never, ever bash our fellowship. To this day, I love our fellowship. When I was with you guys, I felt great. I felt somewhat normal in your abnormality. You know what I mean? No matter what I said at the diner with the guys. See, I didn't find God in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. I got shown a pathway to God in Alcoholics Anonymous, but I found God in the diner talking to old-timers. And these old-timers would listen to my newcomer nonsense for hours on end. To this day, I don't know how they can do it, because I'm good for about 40 minutes, 45 minutes, and then I'm like dozing off, because it's all that self-imposed calamity that we bring in with us, right? And these guys were just wonderful. And it came around that I lost that job because of the arrest caught up with me, 18 months sober, and I was devastated. And if my recovery, or my recovery's always been, I see it in hindsight, I don't see it when I'm going through anything. But you give me 6 months and a good sponsor, I'll tell you exactly why that happened. And I'll tell you folks right now why I got fired. I got fired because in my first, year in Alcoholics Anonymous, 18 months sober or abstinence, I was about the girls, I was about getting the material stuff back, I was $138,000 into debt, and not like IRS debt where they're going to send you a threatening letter. No, I had the bookies, the drug dealers, the loan sharks, and the mob guys looking for me. If a car backfired on Staten Island, I'm jumping over the hedges those first few months. And, I just wanted to pay that back, get this one off my back, get that one off my back. I'm very good at sobering up for a little bit to take care of the scrapes that I caused in my last debacle. But that only lasted so long, and I was just so resentful at everybody, because AA had said to me, you can't hide behind this arrest. You're going to have to let people know. And when I did, I got fired. But I know that because I was chasing the material, and our book will tell us, the man who has the material placed in front of the spiritual has it in the wrong order. And that's exactly what it was. So God removed that from me. And I was living on my mother's couch, and 3 guys approached me at a men's meeting after I just blasted that. I just threw myself on this group and took it hostage. I mean, don't ever ask me if you have a burning desire, Tom? When I'm going, and then I say, I'll be brief, and I just keep them there another hour, and I qualify longer than the guy qualified for. And these 3 gentlemen approached me afterwards, and I call them the ninjas of sponsorship to this day. One has passed since then. But it was a retired fireman, keep it simple, Richard. It was an Italian bookie from Brooklyn called Lucky George, covered in tats, chewed cigars, cursed, dropped the F-bomb with God all the time. I loved it. It was my guy, And then there was this little businessman guy called Cocaine Vinny. So much for the traditions, right? But these guys surrounded me and said, we want you on the golf course tomorrow. We're picking you up at 8 o'clock. And I didn't want to go. I didn't want to have anything to do with these guys, but they said, we'll be there at 8 o'clock, be ready, you don't need clubs. And when they pulled up, they said the most spiritual words you ever hear in Alcoholics Anonymous, and that's get in the car. And they just surrounded me, and we were on the golf course. I don't know if we have golfers here, but there's a certain lingo to golf and things like this that you talk about when you're on a golf course. We're on the first tee, and I'm teeing up, and Vinny says to me, Tom, rarely have we seen a person fail that has thoroughly followed our path. I'm like, what's that about? And then later on in the day, Tom, all that's needed is a little open-mindedness, honesty, and willingness. And I'm like, can you help me find my ball? Like, I don't know what these guys are doing. Then at the 9th hole, they put the switch on, and they moved me over. They said that you always switch cart partners after 9 holes. They lied. that has never happened since. And I sat with this guy, Lucky George, and what I didn't know is George just had an experience with these 12 steps, and my boy was on fire. On fire. He was definitely rearranged in a way that the other men were not. He was so happy he was goofy. He was so happy I wanted to slap him. He was saying things to me that nobody said in Alcoholics Anonymous those first months, those first 18 months. He said to me, Tom, I think you're going to drink. I'm worried about you. I said, George, I'm not going to drink. I got enough AA in me to know that that's not the answer. But I've been seriously thinking about killing myself because I don't know that I can live without it. And he says, I know, but understand that's your choice. He said, that's a pretty dramatic, a pretty drastic solution for a temporary job problem, Tom. It's not as bad as you're making it think. And he hit me with some truths about my situation that I didn't realize. He started to tell me his own story. And that was attractive to me. He didn't tell me what I had to do. He told me what he did. And that was very attractive to me. I had a lot of guys telling me what to do those first 18 months, and I didn't listen to any of them. But here's a man that's telling me what he did, what he got free of losing his son that was killed in a robbery, the way that he got through things in his life. And I was like, wow, I lost a job. He lost a son. And these things hit hard. And I was, like I said, I just got fired. George was already retired. He said, are you willing to come to my house 2 nights a week? And we'll read from this book. He said, I'll cook dinner. I'm going to give you a cassette tape. And back then it was a Joe Hawk cassette tape of a talk he did in 1990 at the Salvation Army in California. And we read with it. And we were so anal about the big book back then. It was incredible. We highlighted, we underlined, double highlight, 3 stars. So I did a weekend with a friend of ours from Texas, Danny Brown. And he said, baby boy, why you got all those marks in your book? And I said, I was told to highlight the importance. He says, are you saying the rest of the book's not important? So I got a clean book now. He shamed me into putting that one on the shelf. But that's what we did. And I owe my life to George. And every April 8th, I call George and I thank him for my life. And we both cry. Because from that kid that couldn't get through anything, that just felt I was worthless, to the man you have standing here today is just night and day. And I had such an experience with George. I remember it like it was yesterday. And I've been through these 12 steps 10 or 11 times in the 29 years I'm here now. And each time a little deeper, hopefully, and each time we see a little bit more about ourselves. But we're willing to accept that truth because we know that truth will set us free and we can grow past it. There's nothing that can't be grown past in this fellowship with this program and God. Absolutely nothing. I have not seen it yet, and I've seen some doozies. I sponsor a lot of guys nowadays, and I see men overcoming things and women overcoming things here that you just don't think you can come back from. So I went to George's house, and I was that sponsee that was so hungry. I don't think I've gotten one of these guys yet. I got to tell you, they'll all come walking in 5-7 minutes late. Hey, what's up with the Starbucks? Like, what are we doing here? I was in front of George's house a half hour early, wondering, am I too early? Am I too early? I was hungry for this. And I remember that first step experience, it was just one of hope. Because I had read this book maybe 50 times in those first 18 months. I couldn't sleep when I came into recovery. Could not get to sleep. I'd put my head on that pillow, toss and turn for 2-3 hours, maybe sleep 40 minutes, wake up, start thinking about things again. The things that are never going to happen, and a distorted memory of things in the past. This is what I lived in. And he read that book to me, and the old guys used to say, you'd never die from insomnia. Read the literature. So I'd read this book, but I read it like a book. I didn't even see the 12 steps in there other than the listing and how it works. You would think a sharp guy like me, it says, now we're at step 3, might have been a little a little hint, but I didn't catch it, And so when he was reading the doctor's opinion to me, my mouth must have dropped open or something. He said, what's the matter? I said, I can't believe they wrote this book about me in 1939. I had never even read the doctor's opinion. I went right to Bill's story, the goods, right? You got to go to the goods, the guy that wrote it, page 1, right? No, he showed me a different way of looking at this book, and I am internally grateful for it. And I didn't know that first time, and even that last time that I drank, I had the phenomenon of craving, that I have a mind that will tell me I can drink and a body that tells me I can't. I didn't know anything about a spiritual malady. I was afraid of God because I grew up with a conception of God from my grandmother and others that, there's punishment there to be had. And I just thought I wasn't worthy of any God. So why bother trying? That's a big trait of mine. Like, if you're afraid of it, why bother trying? I can't imagine how many lost opportunities were there throughout a man's life. That fear just kept me away from it. I know I got married twice out of fear, got divorced twice out of fear. Every fist fight I've ever had out of fear. You want to know the scaredest guy in the room? Look who's yelling the loudest. Look who's slapping. Look who's hitting. I used to think that was a tough guy. That's not a tough guy. It's a little boy in a man's body. And I was that person for a long time. And when we got to step 3, wow. Imagine understanding that third step prayer when you first take it. I think we'd run out of here with our hair on fire, Wait, my life's none of my business? Everything I got to do is centered on helping others and God? I'd run out of here like, no, I'm not signing up for that. I need some stuff done for me. What about me? What about my time, right? Yeah, that's not how he explained it. He explained it was going to get me through steps 4 through 9. And I did not need to believe in God in step 2. I would be in step 2 right now if I had to believe in God in 1997. I didn't believe in God. The actions of 4 through 9 made me believe in God. And I'm telling you, a sustained practice in these principles, you can't shake me away from my God. I see God in everything today. I'm just in a great spot in my recovery right now. And it's just, I look at my wife and I start crying. How does that happen? We have 4 wonderful kids. We got 3 grandkids. All right, they're living with us. We want them out. But, how does that happen? How does that happen? What happens when you get destitute enough and broken enough that you let the light shine in? Because there's nothing God can't do. And God had me write a 4th step. I didn't want to write a 4th step. Definitely didn't want to look at my part. I was very comfortable in being a victim. And look at what they did to me. Love that 3rd column. Love the 2nd column. Oh, that's just great stuff. Had no problems writing them. 4th column's a little tricky. But we did it. And, I wrote a fear inventory, and I used to think I was a tough guy, raised on the street and all that stuff. And I went back to my sponsor, and I said, I could have saved a lot of time. I said, I'm afraid of everything and everybody. And I never even knew it. He said, now we're getting somewhere. I hate those AA guys. But it was wonderful. I had 29 resentments for my mother, who wouldn't leave the only man she ever loved to save me. And I had 31 resentments for an alcoholic father who basically came down to I just didn't think he loved me. It's a tough way to live. And you look at that relationship inventory, and I saw that I was in the same exact relationship with 23 different women over 25 years. And if you would have asked me back then, ladies, I would have said, Tom, why can't you stay in a relationship longer than a year? I would have told you. I don't know, I always date the crazy ones. Honest answer, hand on a Bible. But when you look at it and you put pen to paper and you look at that after prayer and you see that there's one common denominator here, and it's you, it's a little tough to stomach. And then, of course, like any good AA, I'm already ahead 9 in my head. And I'm not going to all of them. That's not happening. That's not happening. So, why did I tell them about that in 5, So we did 5, and I held like about, 10 or 12 things out. I ripped 3 pages out of the back of the book. Those things I was going to take to my grave, and I put them under my seat in my car, and I went up to the mountain, and we prayed up, and I gave George about 3.5 hours on my stuff, and George was so corny. He's like, I am so happy, Tom, you're doing great work here. He said, man, but listen, I just want to tell you, if you've left anything out, please leave it on the mountain here today, because we're only as sick as our secrets here. And I said to myself, he knows. But I looked him in the face, and I said, absolutely nothing, George. I've left it all on the table today. And then I had to walk like 75 stairs down this mountain. And he stayed up on the mountain. It felt like his eyes were piercing the back of my head. And I'm like, tell him, don't tell him, tell him, don't tell him. And I'm like, no, I'm not telling him, not telling him. I get in my car and I put the key in, and I felt a rush of hot air come up from under the seat where I had my thing. It made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. And I just looked down, I picked up the papers, got out of my car and said, hey, George, wait up a minute. And he just crossed his arms and went, come on up, fella, let's finish this thing. And I dumped those worst things on him, and George did what I try to do with all the young men I sponsor now. He identified with almost every one of them. And he said things to me like, yeah, things like that don't work out well for guys like us. Like he had done it. One thing, some of the sexual deviant stuff, I don't know how else to put it, but he said, I never did that, but that sounds like fun. So this is my worst stuff, and this guy's making absolutely nothing of it. And it was a miracle, folks. And the miracle of my 5th step was I went home that night, and I put my head on the pillow, and I went to sleep. There was no more chatter in my brain. It was awesome. I think I achieved a level of sleep that night that I hadn't gotten in my entire life. The noises were quiet. And we did 6 and 7, and who understands 6 and 7 in the beginning? Yeah, let's say the prayer, let's go. Say that prayer, say that prayer, say that prayer. Say that prayer before making every amends. Okay, I'll say that prayer. But being around you folks and trying to practice these principles to the best of my willingness, things started to get better. I don't lie today. Back then, a little progress was, lying bothered me. Still did it once in a while, but it bothered me. And I used to tell them, this conscience is really getting to me. I never had to worry about that stuff before. I was pathological in my lying. I could blow up a lie detector test, no 2 ways about it. But George was just the perfect sponsor for me that time. And when we got to 9, I balked. The money just scared me. Our friend Sheldon says, oh, 8 and 9, that's expensive. That's the way I looked at it. I just couldn't do it. And plus, these guys were rough guys I had to go to. And more often, I did not want to go to those women because I had really seen me for the person I was. So I balked, and I balked for a couple of weeks, and I'm telling you, the insanity of alcohol returned, and I felt like having a drink for the first time in the months that I had been working with George. And I was so afraid of doing any of them that I started to go to different meetings than George. I stopped answering George's calls. And I would go to the beginners meeting. If you're balking on the steps, go to a beginners meeting. It's great. They'll all tell you, you're going too fast. What do you mean you're in 9? You only have a year and a half, And I'm like, that's right. That's what I'm telling them, Yeah, you can get somebody to co-sign your nonsense anywhere here in AA if you look hard enough. But But I'm standing outside of that meeting, and a guy, Postman Bobby, with 30 years, comes up, and he says, "Hey, Tommy, I heard you're going through the 12 steps with George." I said, "I am." Puffed my chest out a little bit, I'm with my road dogs there, and he says, "Listen, would you like to speak at St. Mark's Step?" And I said, "Yeah, I would, sure. I'm good, AA." And he says, "Well, it's on the 9th step." Well, Bob, I have an 8th step list, but I haven't made any amends yet. The fellowship, God working through you folks. He pats me on the back. He says, "You got a few days. Make a few amends. Let us know how they turn out." Walks away. Now all my road dogs, and we'll be there to watch, right? And I'm like, oh, God. So I was petrified to call George, and I called him. And I said, "George, I'd like to review 9. I got to make some amends. I'm dying here." I didn't tell him I'm afraid of looking bad at the step meeting. I just said, "I'm dying here." And he said, "I've been praying that you'd call. Come on over, I'll put on coffee." Where do you get that? I don't know about you folks. I've been going through some health issues and stuff. You call a doctor, "Yeah, I can see you September 10th. I'm thinking I'm dead 3 times by September 10th, doc. Right? I mean, abscess tooth, we'll try to fit you in next week. I haven't slept in 2 days. Can we do something here? Right? Even a haircut now, you need an app. You can't even walk into the barber anymore in my neighborhood. Like, what's this, the cuts? What is that? Well, you call a solid member of AA and it's, "Come on over, I'm putting on coffee." Just one of the many, many gifts we get here. And George was so excited to see me, and we read 9, and I went out on a tear the next day, and I made amends to my mom. And I highly recommend starting with moms. Moms are great. And I poured my heart out to that woman. And we were trained back then. I had pushed my mother down. I had verbally and physically abused my mom, and I had stolen thousands and thousands, $20,000, $30,000, $40,000. I couldn't even put a number on what I've stolen from that house. And I came as clean as I knew I could. And I said, "Mom, this is what I'm clear on. If there's anything I've left out, I'd like you to tell me about it, and I'll just sit quietly." And she said, "Oh, you left out a bunch." And we were both already crying. And she said, "I am so sorry I never had the strength to leave your dad and give you a better life. I know you saw a lot of things you shouldn't see. And when you were taking that money, I thought as if it got you out of this house for a day or 2, it was well worth every penny." She said, "I don't want any money from you, son." She said, "When I was sick, you were the only one that came and saw me." She said, "You would try to borrow money from me, but at least you came." It's the best I could do back then, folks. But she said, "These last 18 or 2 years now that you're with these folks from Alcoholics Anonymous, I cry every day because I know you're going to be okay. I want you to stay with those folks. That's what I want you to do." And 29 resentments from my mom fell from me that day. We became best friends, and you folks showed me how to show up for 7 years until she died. Wasn't a perfect son, but did a couple good years there, and it was awesome. I made amends to my father in a bar. It's the only place I could get him. And at the end of that heartfelt amount, "Well," I said, "Dad, I don't even know how much money I owe you." He said, $12,262 or something. He had the amount, and I'm like, "Oof, this is tough." And but then he said, "We'll work out a schedule. Don't worry about it." He said, "Don't you have to go make coffee for those assholes in AA?" And I said, "Yeah, I do, Dad. I love you." But I started to do something that day with him. I would grab him. I was physically a lot stronger than him, and I would kiss him, and it made him so uncomfortable. But then through sponsorship, I showed up at that bar every Saturday for the next 5 years. And one day he wasn't there. And they said he had to go home because he was bleeding internally. And the bartender said, "Hey, can I talk to you for a second?" And I said, "Sure." And he said, "I just want to tell you how proud your father is of you." And I said, "You'd never know it." He says, "I know. I talk to him every Saturday. All he does is rip you up for an hour when he's here. But man, he can't stop bragging about you and Alcoholics Anonymous throughout the whole week." He says, "To the point it's annoying my customers." And he said, "I just didn't want you to not hear that." And I said, "Well, thanks." And I realized that my father was a better father than I ever was. At least he stayed. He fought this disease. He didn't run away from the ones he loved. He might have mistreated us, but he did the best he could. 31 resentments fell from my father. And I was with him when he died too. Not my nurse sister, me. Yeah, there's still a little sting there. Let's be honest here, right? Program of honesty. And so we go through that, and it was wonderful. And then I'm going to the meeting, and it's a beautiful day. And I have not been to my grandmother's grave out of embarrassment and guilt. She died when I was 16, so I'm 35, 36 years old at that time. So it's been 20 years. And I knew the section she was in, but I didn't know where she was buried. And I got out, and I had a brief letter that I crafted with my sponsor in prayer. And I'm walking up and down the rows of the cemetery, and I can't find it. And I said, I got to go to the meeting. And I walked back on a diagonal to my car, and I'm telling you, if I'm where my car was parked, my grandmother's stone was right here. I parked right next to it. The hair on my neck stood up, and I pulled out this letter, and it was brief. It was just, Grandma, I'm so sorry you saw me as the kid that you did when you left. You gave me everything, and I just spit in your face, and I am so sorry. But I believe that you can hear me, and I believe you can see me, and I'm doing good now, and I'm praying now you'd be proud of me. And I am going to do everything I can to make it worthy of the grandson that you wanted me to be. And I can tell you I couldn't read it. I was crying so hard. I don't remember walking to my car. I don't remember walking going into that meeting. I don't remember sharing at that meeting. But I remember about 12 members, my friends, that came up to me afterward and said, I don't know what you're doing, but you don't stop. You're a different guy. There's something different about you. And I went on a tear with amends. I had 96 or 106 names or something like that. And I mean, people were hiding from me in AA. Taraco's making amends, hide, like I was just pulling people out of meetings. I'm just self-will run riot, trying to get that list done, But what a wonderful experience. The fourth step and the ninth step here, I think, are the two things on the shades that made me fear the most. And next to the birth of my son, Brett, and Matthew. The greatest things that happened to me here. You can't fix it if you don't know what it is. And you can't fix it without God and without sponsorship, my experience. See, because I'm a good sponsor. I got the answers for all my guys. I just don't have them for me. So I need these guys around me. And it's just a wonderful life because of it. About halfway through those amends, George tells me, don't you have to make amends to the Department of Education? I was in pending litigation there as well, and I said, well, George, I'd really like to wait until the court case is up. And he says, and manipulate the outcome as you always have and failed? Corny George, right? And I said, okay, I'll go. He said, put your suit on, go up. He gave me some instructions. I go in and I wait, and the CEO of the CEO of the Division of School Facilities, this guy Jim, I get there at 7 o'clock, I'm sitting there, nobody's there yet. I don't know, the bosses don't come in until 10. I'm in like 3 hours of alcoholic torture in my head. There's the plate glass window, he's gonna throw me through, I'm gonna lose everything, all this stuff. And Jim comes in and he says, Tommy Taraco, how are you? He says, come on in, I got your case on my desk, what's going on? I'm like, case on his desk? What am I, like John Dillinger? I'm the worst of 80,000 employees? I'm like, my mind's running bad. And he says, what's on your mind? And I said, well, Jimmy, I'm a member of Alcoholics Anonymous and doing some step work, and I have a sponsor that tells me I need to talk to you. And he said, what's going on? I said, well, 6 months ago when I was here, I lied to you about everything except for my name. I said, that was my gun, they were my drugs, and it was my third DWI. And he was a big man, he put his glasses on his nose. He said, that's interesting. He says, I'm a deacon? I said, no, I didn't know what a deacon was, swear to God. No iPhones, I couldn't. He said, yeah, I do service in a church. He said, Tommy, guys like us, don't find God because things are good. He said, I found the Catholic Church with my alcoholism, and I haven't had a drink in 7 years. So I know what it took for you to come up here and say that to me. He said, look, I'm not the determining factor here, but if you do get your job back, you come up and see me, and we'll figure out what you can do to make this right. And I said, thanks. I walked out of there like, I levitated out of there. I couldn't imagine that I just had that conversation. And the belief in God came on strong. So George would tell me corny stuff like, look, if you're nervous, make like you're bringing God with you. Open your passenger car door, move the books off the front seat, let God in, close the door. I was doing corny stuff like this. When I walked into Jim's office, there was 2 chairs there. I'm like, yes, God's here. No, there's always 2 chairs next to a businessman's desk. But this is how I was looking at things, right? And then maybe about 2 weeks later, I get a registered letter saying that they're about to hear my case in the Department of Education. And I called George, I'm freaking out. And he said, listen, man, you didn't even think you were going to get a court appearance, so go. And I went over to George's house, and I celebrated 2 years with you folks in that time frame. And George gave me some instructions, and I went. And these attorneys pounded me on the stands for about 2.5 hours. And I'll tell you, to this day, I think back at it, and I don't think they've ever heard a testimony like this guy gave them. I was so brutally honest that they were like looking at each other. Did he just say that? Like, no, listen, I can't tell you that was my gun. I don't recall putting it in my belt, but I'm assuming it was because that's what I do when I drink. Those were the answers. And you were drunk driving? Oh, yeah, and they haven't even caught me for all the times they should have. I mean, I was like sinking my own ship every time. The guy that's representing me is looking at me like, like, what are you doing? Stop. And they went through everything. And, I don't know how many, well, I'm sure there's a bunch of you here that know our AA file. We go with our AA file, right? Our sponsor, the sponsees, the home group members, the certificate completions from rehab or whatever you have and all that stuff. I had 3 diplomas from alcohol awareness I proudly display. And I brought that, and they read that. And they said, okay, Mr. Taraca, we have one more question. Are you telling us that you have not ingested any alcohol or drugs since April 8th, 1995? And my sponsor gave me this line. He said, you show him your AA coin. And I said, listen, you've taken my job. I want to thank you for the time you've shown me and heard this case today. But you've already taken my job. But there's 2 things I'm not willing to give you. And they said, what's that? And I said, well, this. And I said, because regardless of outcome. They said, what's that? It's my 2-year chip. I said, regardless what happens here, it's a job. It's not my life. I'm not drinking. And I said, and the other thing is my integrity, because Alcoholics Anonymous has given me that back. With that, the arbiter gave me a wink. Now, I don't know if he was sweet on me or if he was one of us, but I don't care, because they came back with a ruling. We were just asking for the union job back. And they came back and they said, you've answered all our questions, you've done everything we've asked you to do over these last months, and we're going to award you your job back. And they said, if you stay clean and don't get in any trouble for a year, we're going to grant you the promotion that you were seeking. And they said, and because you've done everything we've asked, we're going to give you $17,000 in back pay. We weren't asking for any of that. No. Do you know anybody that's gotten $17,000 for doing 9-step amends? I mean, the money usually doesn't flow in this direction, right? And it was just wonderful. And I did go back to Jim, and I told him I got the job back. And Jim says, I heard. I couldn't be more happy for you. And he said, and I'll tell you exactly what you need to do. You need to work extra hard. You need to be grateful at your job. Don't ever be a union employee or a civil service employee again. You mentor young men. You work through your lunch hour if you get to the job early. I want to see a work ethic out of you that I've never seen from you. He said, there's no limits for you, Tom. If you put what the stuff that you did in the bad way into the good way, there'll be no limits for you. And I said, Jim, I can do that. And I went back to that job with a new look on life, a new pair of glasses, as Chuck would say. And I just worked my ass off. Jimmy retired about 15 years ago, and because of a mentorship I had with him, because of that amends process, he brought me along in management, up and up and up. I was his right-hand man, and 15 years ago they gave me his job. And now, folks, 2025, I'm going to retire. They're going to have to pay me the rest of my life, and I can't say it without laughing, because it's like I'm getting over, and it's just unbelievable. But so many things have happened. We have a life in 10, 11, and 12. One of the sayings I absolutely love these days is, the life we deserve and the life we desire is in the work we avoid. And I see a lot of us come in here and we get a great life, and we get a little complacent in our AA, and we think we're too busy to help others and to do that stuff. Don't ever fall into that trap. I did, and I burnt it to the ground with about 7, 8 years of sobriety and did all the wrong things here and had a second surrender here that was worse than the first one. But I've always been blessed with great sponsors. My first sponsor gave me the best lesson that I've ever seen. 7 years sober, untreated in Alcoholics Anonymous with demons like I got demons. He put a gun in his mouth and killed himself. A great guy. He just couldn't live with it. George was wonderful, and he was the only guy that could take me through those 12 steps at the time. As rough as he was, as new as he was in it, George has never worked with another guy since. I've worked with hundreds. George, on his 35th anniversary, just on Zoom, I jumped on the Zoom meeting, he's in Florida. He said, I only took one guy through the steps, but he's a really good one. He's still working with guys. He's like still taking credit for this. This is 29 years ago, And, but when I got in 10, 11, and 12, he suggested that I find somebody that's practicing these principles a little more stringently than he was. And I would go to the same meetings on Staten Island, and I saw a guy, I used to call him Angry Joe. He was a biker dude, he had a big red beard, crazy hair, the bandana, the chaps, the Harley Davidson gear. He looked like a lot of you guys down here. And he would come in and he would just bitch and moan about everything. And people would be afraid of him. Then I see him, and he's got 17 years sober at the time. I see him, and he's clean cut, he's got the boy haircut, wire rim glasses, and he's sharing that he's going to be a Montessori kindergarten teacher. He starts to talk about prayer, meditation, and nightly inventory. I'm like, I'm having an experience over here, but this is sick. And I ran over to him and asked him to be my sponsor, and he said he'd be honored to. And that led into 24 years of the best male-male relationship I've ever had in my life. And coming out of COVID, Joe died of congestive heart failure. On Tuesday night, he finished reading A Vision for You with a new guy, and he died Friday. I hope someday I can be that guy. Joe told me something after that bottom. I came back to this practice of these principles with willingness I never had before. And I told Joe I was starting to fall for Cheryl, and he said, you don't put your hands on that girl until you can tell me you take full responsibility for her 3 children as they would be your own. And I said, oh, that's a little harsh, Joe. And he said, you tell me. I'm not listening to any more of your sex inventory about this stuff, and you're just going to keep doing it. The book's going to tell you you're going to drink. I'm not hearing it. He didn't speak that way. He was a very quiet-spoken man. And I said, okay, Joe, I'll do that. And I didn't touch Cheryl for 14 months. There was a lot of flirting. There was a lot of tense moments. There was like, I gotta go, that kind of stuff going on. But it led us to the absolute best courtship. At 47 years old, I made love to the first woman I ever did. And it's been awesome. It's still awesome, babe. And so I go back to Joe and I said, Joe, I'm in love with her. I'm ready to take those kids on. And he says, well, go do what you got to do. You're a grown-ass man. I'm like, wait a minute, I'm finally following directions here, And Cheryl and I got together, and we've been together ever since, and she's just my best friend. And that boy Brett that I abandoned and didn't see for 8 years, he's my best friend too. He's 38 years old. He's 9 years clean with us here. And he's following in Dad's footsteps. He's an engineer. It's unbelievable. Cheryl's boys, AJ and Robert, they're great kids. Robert's living with us with his wife and his 3 kids. 2, 4, and 7. The house is 1,600 square feet. You talk about the necessity to practice these principles in all your affairs. But man, that's the crazy house I grew up in. I bought that house in 1998. That house is healing itself. It might be not much of a house, but I'll put it up against anybody's home here. There is so much love in that house. It's an AA house. It's an open AA house. You come knocking on our door, come on in. Many nights I come home, one of Cheryl's girls there, or one of my guys. I tell her, don't feed them. They always come back, But she does that. The kids hear us pray. The The kids never hear us yell. The kids hear us talk. The kids see love. The kids see service. They don't listen to us. They watch us. And I think I'm being a good example there. You folks have just given me so much. And sometimes I don't even think I deserve it. When Joe passed, I didn't know what to do. I was lost, and I wrote down 3 names. And there's 2 guys in this room that were on that list. They don't know that, but they were on that list. And I gave it to Joe, to my service sponsor, Jimmy A. And I said, Jimmy, this is what I think I'm asking. And he said, well, Tom, I just tell you to pray a little bit more. These guys are all solid AAs, but with your personality, I think you're taking us off the way out. And I said, all right, I'll pray. I start praying, and the house phone rings. House phone never rings. Only telemarketers call the house phone, right? Everybody gets you on your cell. And all of a sudden it's, hey, Tommy T, it's Harold L. in Missouri. I put my hand on the phone and I said, not this guy, God, please. Those of you who don't know Harold, he is like the busiest guy in AA. And he asks me to do a workshop with him with some men on Zoom. And I said, Harold, I don't know if you heard that my sponsor passed. He said, yeah, I did. I'm really sorry about that. And I said, I know you're busy, but do you have time to take another guy on? I'd be happy to walk this journey hand in hand with you, Tom T. And then he goes on to treat me like I got 90 days. He says, but we're going to have this thing called the covenant. And I said, okay, you want to explain that a little bit? And he says, well, if I think you're lying, I'm going to call your wife. Will you give me your wife's phone number? I said, okay. And what about those kids you're always bragging about? You give me their numbers too? Okay, I'm all right with that. And then he says, well, how many meetings a week you going to? I'm going to 3. You working with anybody? 4 guys. Okay, what about commitments? I said, well, I'm the GSR service sponsorship chair, and I'm the treasurer of the home group. He said, no, real commitments. Are you going into the jails or the institutions? I'm like, no, but I guess I can call it the group. Okay, call me when you get one. Click. Harold's not Joe, but Harold's Harold. And I've had a wonderful 3 years with Harold, and he's brought me through a lot of stuff that still happens. It still comes up. I was laughing with somebody before. We were talking, well, maybe it was you, Buckley. We were saying, we get a little bit down the road here, and I'm just amazed at the sick thoughts I still have. I'm just not acting on them the way I once did. You guys have taught me a little bit about a filter, just a little bit. And just by doing that and following these dictates, and to wake up every morning and pray to be a better father, a better husband, a better AA mentor, a better sponsor. What a life. What a life. I'm going to leave you with this, folks. It's my hope. We'll come out of this conference, we'll be charged up. I know I will be. Just don't let that fade. They're dying out there, and they're dying with an urgency that they weren't dying in 1995 when I came in. If you relapsed in 1995, you broke your leg, you lost your wife, you lost your job, you cracked up the car again, you did some jail time. That was about it. I'm sure Nashville's exactly like Staten Island. These kids go out now, they're dead. They don't come back. That saying, keep coming back, is outdated. We need to stay. We need to do everything we can to help these kids. So what I take away from things like this is, I will be back at that home group that I always want to leave, and I'll be there early, and I will always kid around, talk football with the guys. I'll kid around with the girls. Although they think of me as a father figure now, it's not a great role, How'd that happen? But my eye will always be trained on that door, because we've been crafted with our pain and suffering to help these people when no one else can. And that is our God-given talent, and it is our God-given duty to give back to the people that gave to us. I would not be here if not for being on the shoulders of many. And one little shout out, there's about 12 or 15 men in this room from a retreat down here called The Usual Suspects that I went to about 12 years ago. These guys changed my life. They taught me what it was to be a better man. They showed me what it was to be a better man. And I have a really, really strong sense of duty to show the next man that. Don't lose that duty. God bless you, Nashville. Thank you.
I tell you what, we're going to close up with, for those who care